Robocop Rogue City Unfinished Business, the standalone DLC on Steam Deck. Thanks to Taeyeon for providing a code of the game a couple days ahead of release, so I had time to actually play it. So this is a standalone DLC for Robocop Rogue City. You don't need to have the base game to play this. Right now the Steam Deck compatibility is basically playable, small text, sometimes shows keyboard and mouse, and the game requires manual configurations of graphic settings to perform well on Steam Deck. I agree on that one. And the controller actually works. Then when it comes to the settings, we're using 1152 by 720 TSR, which is like the alternative to XeSS and FSR, but on Unreal Engine 5 at 65%, 5% more than on the base game. Then when it comes to the settings themselves, very similar to what I showed in the full game. Medium foliage, everything else on low, shadows on medium, because otherwise shadows are super pixelated. It's basically like having Minecraft as a shadow, which feels weird, and a bit of draw distance. You can also increase the anti-aliasing to medium to fight some of those jagged edges, very small. The thing is, we're using TAA, so from low to medium, the performance difference is very small, so we hit apply, which is X. I chose 1152 by 720 because you can open this 3 dots menu, scroll all the way to the bottom, and control the sharpness manually from the built-in Steam Deck menu. Thanks to Instant Gaming for sponsoring this video. Instant Gaming is a website for PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch keys at a cheaper price. You can find, as usual, Clear Obscure Expedition 33 for Steam for $33.09 US. Also, newer games like the one we're playing today, Robocop Rogue City Unfinished Business, is a standalone DLC, so you don't need to buy the full game, for $24.58 US. And with this partnership, we're giving away one game each month to one of you guys, so the person that wins by hitting participate. Last month, Torrenator chose Stellar Blade Complete Edition, and we also got Spibet 2 months ago that won Assassin's Creed Shadows, so you can choose the game. So thanks again to Instant Gaming for sponsoring this video. Let's continue. And now I'm basically at the very beginning of the game. And the very beginning of the game is when you start. There's an investigation phase at the beginning that is very short. But in this part is when you start the action in the DLC, and there's a good amount of enemies, a good amount of destructible things. Like the base game, if you ever played the Rogue City instead of just this expansion, you're going to understand what I'm talking about. These are more contained, smaller levels with, in my opinion, more action, because you start with upgrades on Robocop right away. Things that you have to unlock in the base game are already unlocked here. Come on, pop your heads out. And again, it's basically, when it comes to technology, it's basically the same as Rogue City, same graphics, same options. You can probably notice, at least if you watch my original Robocop Rogue City video, this one actually runs better. And that's because, again, it's more contained environments, less open locations, although we still have traversal stutter, as you saw a moment ago. The game does compile shaders before you start playing, which is good. But when you're traversing certain areas, like right now, you get those spikes, which I don't know how to fix. The base game has the same issue. We're going to breach with the actual Robocop weapon. And again, if you played the base game, this will be very familiar. And it's all single player content. I don't know how many hours of gameplay we're talking about, but when it comes to performance, in intensive gunfights such as this one, when there is many enemies shooting at you, explosions, and all those particle effects, because there's particle effects, each time a bullet hits anything, you get those sparks everywhere, which I think is pretty cool. That destroys the GPU, and by destroying I mean it's very heavy on the GPU when doing that, and those are the stress points, when you're actually in combat with multiple enemies that are shooting at you at the same time. Which, again, falls in line with what I showed you on the base game. This is another level that you get into after the beginning, that something is falling on top of you. And again, it's pretty detailed. I'm usually a big fan of this game in general. I really like the original. But as usual, it's UE5, like most modern games, unfortunately. But I think considering it's a UE5 game, on Steam Deck it runs okay. You don't have to use ultra performance upscaling, as long as you're using TSR with at least 60 to 65% resolution, which is more in line with what quality upscaling would be like. You should be okay. I wouldn't lock it to 40 because we are limited by GPU and CPU, at least when it comes to the frame rate. So you cannot maintain 40s consistently, there's no way to do that, especially when you're in combat. So my advice for this one, you're seeing unlocked frame rates right now since the beginning of the video, is to actually lock it to 30 FPS. Yeah, I know, a shooter at 30 FPS, well, we have UE5 on a portable PC that came out 5 years ago, so my point still stands. So yeah, I think considering it's UE5, it's pretty damn impressive that I can play it on Steam Deck with decent resolution. I mean, again, it's like quality upscaling at the end of the day, which on a smaller screen like this, I think it looks good enough, but I'm going to show you what it looks like on the bigger screen as well, very quickly. Let's first lock it to 30 FPS using the built-in FPS cap. Okay, we got the built-in FPS cap. I can feel the latency already due to the FPS lock. You can also lock it with the in-game settings for less latency, but the frame times are not as great. That's why I'm using the SteamOS solution. You get used to it, but you can feel it. So again, I think it looks pretty good. The particle effects, as you can see, show up very often, which doesn't help the GPU at all. But at least the GPU usage is pretty high, which is a good sign. What I'm going to do right now actually is show you how it looks on a bigger screen. This is how it looks on the portable device. But on the bigger screen, you'll notice all the flaws, obviously, so let me swap to that very quick and I get back to you. Alright, welcome back. We're now on full screen mode, to say it in some way. This is when you plug it into a screen, which is something that I don't usually do with my Steam Deck, especially on bigger games like this one, because when you plug in your Steam Deck, you don't have more performance. Performance is basically the same. The CPU and the GPU do the same thing when you're plugged into the screen and when you are playing handheld, which is a good thing and a bad thing. Because the good thing is on handheld it's a pretty solid device, but then when you plug it into a screen, we're playing below 720p on a screen. There's nothing wrong with that, but it won't look sharp. It will look super soft and pixelated, obviously, because we're doing, I don't know, maybe you have a 4K TV or a 1080p TV. On a 1080p TV is more passable, but we're still below 720p. So I think this game is more suitable to playing handheld. On the smaller screen is way less noticeable that we're dropping the resolution that hard, but it's necessary in order to get anything playable that is UE5. Although I was expecting it to be much of a lower frame rate, especially after playing the base game. The base game can get 30s in open locations with heavy combat, but it wasn't that stable across the board. Here, as I showed you with unlocked frame rates, yeah, you can be above 30, but as soon as something happens that involves combat, which is kind of the point of the game, that's when you start dropping into the 30s, so a 30 FPS lock, especially for better battery life, is highly recommended. If your Steam Deck is locked to 30 on this game with these settings, I'm expecting, at least on the OLED, 2.5 to 3 hours at best. Then when it comes to the LCD Steam Deck, uses more power and has a smaller battery, I'll expect more like 90 to 100 minutes. So it's a bit below the OLED when it comes to battery life, which is expected. But in a heavy game like this, it makes complete sense. I mean, it's pretty heavy when it comes to every component, the CPU, the GPU. And it's not 100% perfect when it comes to performance either. There's traversal stutter, better said. Despite the shitter compilation, traversal stutter can still happen. We saw that on many UE5 games. This one is no exception. But I think the resolution we're getting out of it with upscaling, we're using TSR, which in my opinion looks clearer and better in motion, but a bit more pixelated. So softness versus pixelation, all up to you. We're still on 65% resolution, 65% native. That means that we're basically above what quality upscaling on FSR would be like. XeSS runs worse and is with more ghosting on screen. And then when it comes to FSR is super blurry in this game, so I recommend you avoid FSR and stick with XeSS at a lower pixel count. or use TSR, which is a solution that usually UE5 comes built in with. I think it's a good balance. It has good edges, it's a bit pixelated, so some chunkiness to the pixels, but it doesn't look ultra soft. And again, performance is superior to XeSS, at least on this game, and you can push a higher pixel count. In this case, 60 to 65% resolution is good enough, like on the base game, but this definitely does run better than the base game, at least for what I played so far. So what's my opinion on this? Well, I played the base game a big amount on Steam Deck. Of course, not perfect. You have the same issues as here, traversal stutter. There is also pixelation because it's a pretty low resolution, but on the smaller screen I think it's passable. It's also 30 FPS, but you get a UE5 game on the go that has a very good gameplay, at least in my opinion. When it comes to shooters, it's nothing groundbreaking, but I think it gets the job done. It's a fun shooter, reminds me more of the time when I started playing shooters like in the PS2, PS3 era. Mostly closer to PS2, feels like an older game built with UE5. It sounds like a bad thing, but for me at least it's a good thing. And it's a game that you feel that wants you to have fun, and that's basically it. Prop destruction that you can do here and there. I mean, also these sodas can fly all over the place. And you don't need to play the base game to be able to play this. You can buy this separately, play it without playing the base game. But the base game, I would say, is the game to play right now, because due to this DLC dropping, there's been a lot of discounts on the base game. Not sure if those are still up, but I saw it was very cheap in comparison. Not sure if those discounts at the time of making this video are still happening, but it was super cheap. I think it was like under $10, which is crazy, at least in my region. But my biggest issue, again, this is a traversal stutter that you can see here. That happens when you're getting from one area to another. Pretty common in UE5. I wish on this one that wasn't a thing, but it is what it is. So if you've never played the base game, I highly recommend you play that first and then get to the DLC. But if you just want to play the DLC that is more, at least in my opinion, action oriented, you get the skills right away, you get more fun things to do from the get-go. You can also just get the DLC. Runs a bit better than the base game, at least on Steam Deck, because smaller environments, but it'll really be hard to maintain anything above 35 FPS, especially when you're in combat like here, that you get effects on screen, particles, all that jazz, which again also happened in the base game, but in a worse amount because bigger maps. So I highly recommend it. If you haven't played the original, go play the original, that's my opinion. It also runs like this on Steam Deck with a slightly lower resolution. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did revisiting Robocop. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye guys. Thanks for watching.